Hola amigos! Welcome to Everyday Spanish with Stephanie. Today, we're tackling yet another one of the biggest challenges for Spanish language learners. That's mastering Spanish verbs. But don't worry, like always, I've got you, and I have another game-changing strategy that will transform the way that you approach Spanish verbs in conversation from here on out. Spanish verbs can be overwhelming, especially when you're trying to speak Spanish fluently. There's so many verb conjugations and just verbs to learn in general. No wonder it's such a big struggle for so many learners. Add to that irregular verbs, different tenses, and complex rules, it's enough to make your head spin. But today, I have a mind-blowing strategy for you that will make all of this so much easier. It's called the 50 Essential Verbs Strategy, and it's going to revolutionize the way that you think of verbs and use them in conversations. Are you ready to unlock the secret to boosting your Spanish fluency? Let's dive in. Now, when we talk about Spanish fluency, we're really talking about the ability to express yourself more easily and naturally in Spanish. By focusing on 50 essential Spanish verbs, we're going to give you the tools to construct a wide variety of sentences and express a broad range of ideas. Instead of trying to memorize hundreds of verbs at random and all of their conjugations at first, we're going to hone in and focus our attention on the most commonly used and versatile verbs in Spanish. This approach will help you start seeing patterns in verb usage and conjugations, making them easier to remember and use in everyday conversations. Let's start with our first set of 25 verbs in Spanish. These are the workhorses of Spanish verbs. You're going to use them all the time in everyday conversation. Okay, here we go. Here are the first 25 verbs. Ser, which means to be more permanently. Estar also means to be, but for less permanent things. Tener means to have. Hacer means to do or to make. Ir means to go. Venir means to come. And decir means to say or tell. Hablar is to speak. Comer, to eat. And beber is to drink. Vivir is to live. Trabajar means to work. Estudiar means to study, while aprender means to learn. Enseñar means to teach. Comprar means to buy. Vender means to sell. Pagar means to pay. Querer, to want. Poder, to be able to. Saber means to know, like information. Conocer means to know, but in reference to people or places. Pensar means to think. Creer means to believe. And finally, dar means to give. Let's go through each one, focusing on pronunciation. I want you to repeat after me. Ser, estar, tener, hacer, ir, venir, decir, hablar, comer, beber, vivir, trabajar, estudiar, aprender, enseñar, comprar, vender, pagar, querer, poder, saber, conocer, pensar, creer, and finally, dar. Okay, now let's look at some common everyday ways to use this verb in conversation. Here are a few examples. Soy estudiante. I am a student. We're using ser, which is to be, for more permanent characteristics. Estoy cansada. I'm tired. I'm using estar here, which also means to be, but for more temporary kinds of conditions. Tengo un perro. I have a dog. Hago mi tarea todos los días. I do my homework every day. Voy al supermercado. I'm going to the supermarket. Remember, amigos, mastering these 50 essential verbs will give you a solid foundation in Spanish conversation. In our next section, we'll look at how we can combine some of these verbs with other key phrases to make our sentences more complex and more natural. Now that we've learned our first 25 verbs, let's talk about a few key phrases that you can use with these verbs to sound more natural in your conversations. These phrases are kind of like magic wands that can make your sentences sound more complex and natural. Let's focus on 5 key phrases. Quiero means I want. Puedo means I can. Voy a means I'm going to. Tengo que means I have to. Me gustaría means I would like to. By combining these phrases with our essential verbs, we can express a wide range of ideas. Let's see how it works. Quiero comer. I want to eat. Puedo hablar español. I can speak Spanish. Voy a estudiar mañana. I'm going to study tomorrow. Tengo que trabajar hoy. I have to work today. Me gustaría aprender más. I would like to learn more. Let's practice using these phrases with some of our essential verbs. I'll give you one of the 5 phrases and then one of our key 25 verbs from before, and I want you to combine them into a sentence. Okay, use the phrase quiero with the verb aprender. You might have said something like, quiero aprender a cocinar. I want to learn how to cook. Now use the phrase voy a with another one of the 25 verbs. Your choice. Now use the phrase voy a with the verb comprar. Maybe you said, voy a comprar un café. I'm going to buy a coffee. All right, great job with the first 25 verbs. Let's move on to the next 25 essential Spanish verbs. These verbs will further expand your ability to express yourself in Spanish. All right, we have escribir, which means to write. Leer means to read. Escuchar, listen. Ver means to see. Mirar means to look at. Buscar means to look for. Encontrar means to find. Perder means to lose. Ganar means to win or to earn. Jugar means to play. Cantar is to sing. Bailar means to dance. Cocinar means to cook. Dormir means to sleep. Despertar means to wake up. Salir means to go out. Entrar is to enter. Llegar, to arrive. Regresar is to return. Cambiar means to change. Comenzar means to begin. Terminar means to finish. Ayudar is to help. Necesitar means to need. And finally, olvidar means to forget. Now practice pronouncing each of these words after me. You ready? Escribir. Leer. Escuchar. Ver. Mirar. Buscar. Encontrar, perder, ganar, jugar, cantar, bailar, cocinar, dormir, despertar, salir, entrar, llegar, regresar, cambiar, comenzar, terminar, ayudar, necesitar, olvidar. Okay, here's a couple example sentences of how you could use a few of these verbs. Escribo un correo electrónico. I write an email. Leo un libro interesante. I read an interesting book. Escucho música todos los días. I listen to music every day. Okay, now that we have our 50 essential verbs in Spanish, let's talk about how to use them to make more complex sentences. In Spanish, a basic affirmative sentence follows this pattern. Subject plus the verb plus the object. For example, yo leo un libro. Ella escucha música. Remember, in Spanish, it's really common to omit that subject. So instead of yo leo un libro, you might just hear leo un libro because the ending actually tells us the subject. The verb's ending actually indicates to us who the subject is. To form a negative sentence, we just simply add the word no. This goes before the verb. To make a negative sentence, all we have to do is add the word no before the verb. No leo un libro. I don't read a book. Ella no escucha música. She doesn't listen to music. To form a question, all we have to do is go back to that first affirmative sentence and change our intonation just a little bit. ¿Lees un libro? Do you read a book? Ella escucha música? Does she listen to music? We can also use some question words when trying to ask questions like ¿qué? For what? ¿Cómo? For how? And so on. For example, ¿qué lees? What are you reading? Or ¿dónde escucha música? Where does she listen to music? I want you to practice forming different kinds of sentences with our 50 essential verbs. The more you practice, the more natural it will become. Remember, amigos, mastering these 50 essential verbs with the key phrases is going to significantly increase your fluency. Keep practicing and you'll be speaking Spanish with confidence in no time. All right, amigos, it's time to put everything that we've learned into practice. Let's use our 50 essential verbs and the sentence structures that we've discussed to create some real-life conversations. I'll give you a scenario and I want you to think of how you'd respond using one of our essential verbs. Are you ready? Let's go. Scenario number 1. You're meeting a new friend. How would you introduce yourself and ask them about their hobbies? Here's a possible response. Hola, me llamo Stephanie. Soy estudiante. Me gusta leer y escuchar música. ¿Qué te gusta hacer? Here's scenario 2. You're ordering food at a restaurant. How would you ask for the menu and place an order for some food? Here's a possible response. Quiero comer paella y beber una limonada. Okay, now it's your turn. I want you to pause the video and really think about what you might say in these next scenarios. You're asking for directions to the museum. You're describing your daily routine. You're making plans with a friend for the weekend. Remember, try to use some of the 50 essential verbs and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we learn. Now, if you're serious about mastering these 50 essential verbs and improving your Spanish overall, I have a fantastic resource for you. The Unacademy Languages app is designed to complement the 50. It offers interactive lessons that will reinforce these verbs and their usage, making it so much easier to internalize them and use them in everyday conversation. Some of the great features of the Unacademy app include lessons focused on our 50 essential Spanish verbs, practice exercises to help you master each verb in different contexts, native speaker audio to help perfect your pronunciation, personalized learning paths that adapt to your progress, and quizzes and tests to reinforce learning. To give it a try, just click on the link below in the description. Trust me, it's a fantastic resource to complement what we discuss in this channel. Now that you're comfortable with our 50 essential verbs in their present tense form, let's discuss how they can be used in different tenses. This is going to really expand your ability to express yourself in Spanish. For example, let's take the verb hablar, which means to speak. In the present, you say hablo español, I speak Spanish. The past, it's hablé español ayer, I spoke Spanish yesterday. And the future, hablaré español mañana, I will speak Spanish tomorrow. Remember, even irregular verbs will follow patterns in their conjugations. For example, take the verb ir, which means to go. In the present, say voy al parque, I go to the park. The past, fui al parque ayer, I went to the park yesterday. The future, iré al parque mañana, I'll go to the park tomorrow. As you become more comfortable with these verbs, you can start using them in more complex structures. For example, use 2 of the verbs together. Quiero aprender más español. I want to learn more Spanish. You can use verbs that require a reflexive pronoun. Me despierto temprano cada mañana. I wake up early every morning. Or using verbs in the imperative command form, like escucha la música. Listen to the music. Or even using verbs in the subjunctive mood. Espero que entiendas estos verbos. I hope that you understand these verbs. Remember, mastering these verbs in different contexts will significantly boost your conversation skills. Keep practicing and don't be afraid to experiment with these verbs in different settings. All right, amigos, let's recap what we've learned today about the 50 essential verbs in Spanish. We've learned that by focusing on these key verbs, we can express a wide range of ideas and actions, construct basic sentences in Spanish, combine verbs with key phrases to express more complex sentences, use these verbs as a foundation to understand more complex grammatical concepts. Remember, these 50 verbs are part of your toolkit for Spanish conversation. They're the building blocks that will help you express yourself more confidently and fluently. Now, let me share a few more additional tips that will help you master these verbs and your Spanish conversation skills. Number 1, practice daily. Even just 10 to 15 minutes a day can make a big difference. Number 2, use flashcards. Create flashcards with the verb on one side and its meaning or even a sample sentence on the other side. Number 3, write example sentences. For each verb, try to write 3 to 5 sentences to reinforce its usage. Number 4, practice saying these verbs and sentences out loud to help improve your pronunciation. Number 5, try to use these verbs in real life situations and conversations. Number 6, listen for these verbs. When watching Spanish TV or listening to Spanish music, listen for and try to identify these 50 Spanish verbs. Number 7, group similar verbs together. Create your own categories or families of verbs to help you remember them better. And finally, number 8, be patient with yourself. Learning a language takes time. Celebrate your progress, no matter how small. And there you have it, amigos, the 50 essential verb strategy to boost your Spanish fluency. Remember, learning a language does take time and practice, but with this focused approach, you now have a powerful tool to make this process more manageable and easier to remember. I encourage you to start applying this strategy to your Spanish practice today. Create your own sentences, practice with a language partner, and use them in your everyday conversations. You'll be so amazed at how much your Spanish begins to improve. And don't forget, if you want to take your language learning to the next level, check out the Unacademy Languages app. It's a fantastic resource that complements everything that we've gone over today. With its interactive lessons, native speaker audio, and personalized learning plan, it's the perfect tool to reinforce your mastery of these 50 essential Spanish verbs. The link is in the description below. Give it a try. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and to subscribe to our channel for more Spanish learning tips and tricks. And I'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts and comments below. Which verb do you find most helpful? How has this approach helped you improve your Spanish conversation skills? Remember, as we say in Spanish, la práctica hace el maestro. Practice makes perfect. Keep practicing, keep learning, and soon you'll be navigating Spanish conversations with ease. Hasta la próxima, amigos!